So I recently rewatched the 2000 sci-fi drama Space Cowboys. It's actually the first time I'd watched this movie in almost 20 years, I think. It stars Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, and James Garner. A story about some old, long-retired Air Force test pilots who didn't make it into space back in the 60s who finally get their chance. A real feel-good factor kind of movie. Now, it's a bit cliched and cheesy in places. It does remind me a bit of Armageddon in some respects. In that film, NASA has to enlist the help of some redneck deep-core drillers to go into space and drill into an asteroid to destroy it with a nuke. Silly, really, considering such a job could easily be handled by NASA astronauts, but it makes for an entertaining and fun concept. In this film, NASA needs the help of an old crew of Air Force guys because their current crop of engineers and astronauts can't decipher an outdated guidance system developed in the 50s by main character Frank Corvin, played by Clint Eastwood. So obviously there has to be a bit of buy-in from the audience, but as unlikely as such a scenario would be in real life, the film is written so well that it actually does work, and you get on board with the idea pretty quickly. If you haven't seen Space Cowboys, please stop this review now and go and watch it, and then come back to me, because there will be major spoilers ahead. So with that out of the way, the movie opens in 1958 during a test flight situation. Two pilots, Frank Corvin and William Hawk Hawkins, are forced to eject from their aircraft and make an emergency landing. They have a punch-up about it, given the ongoing petty rivalry between the two of them. Later, the four members of Project Daedalus are told in a press briefing by Bob Gerson that the Air Force will no longer be leading America's space program. Instead, NASA will be formed, and the four men will be replaced by a monkey. The characters in this scene are played by younger actors with the voices of Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, James Garner, and James Cromwell all dubbed in. It actually works really well by and large, except Tommy Lee Jones's voice doesn't work quite so well coming out of the mouth of his younger acting counterpart, Eli Craig. But the actor who plays the younger Clint Eastwood is a dead ringer. His name is Toby Stephens. The film flashes forward to present day, or more accurately, the year 2000, almost 24 years ago. It's hard to believe. NASA has a problem. Sarah Holland, played by Marcia Gay Harden, and an older Bob Gerson, played by James Cromwell, give us some very important exposition. A large Russian satellite called Icon has an orbit that is slowly decaying, and in 30 to 40 days, it will enter the Earth's atmosphere. A Russian general, Vostok, played by Rade Serbija, tells them that Icon must be saved because it's important for Russian telecommunications or something. All very suspicious at this point. I'm sure this won't be a giant ball of foreshadowing later on in the movie. NASA asks Frank Corvin to assist them because the guidance system he developed is non-responsive. He's at a loss as to how his guidance system ended up on a Russian satellite. The system Frank developed for Skylab, and it wasn't supposed to be in service this long. None of the current crop of engineers can make heads or tails of it. They need Frank's expertise, but he's reluctant to assist them because of the bad blood between himself and NASA program manager Bob Gerson, who he blames for torpedoing Project Daedalus all those years ago. Frank's only solution that he can offer is that Gerson send up the original Team Daedalus into space. That's himself, Tank, Hawk, and Jerry. 4 geriatrics, and therein lies the core of the film's story. The old resentments between Frank and Gerson, and the rivalry and strained relationship between Frank and Hawk that provides significant character tension and conflict, while the old age of the Team Daedalus members provides plenty of gags about how they're over the hill. The scenes where they're training, struggling to keep up with the younger astronauts, and the playful banter and ribbing they receive about their age. But in those scenes, there's also occasional moments of sentimentality for the old days, a wistfulness that so many of their old friends are dead, and a real sense of heroism to overcome the challenges posed by old age and still take on such an important task. Their aged bodies may not be what they once were, but they can still prove themselves to be useful and to contribute to the mission with dignity. It makes their achievement of getting into space all the more significant because of the impediment posed by their advanced years. There's life in the old dog yet, being the thinking. Frank goes to see each one of his old teammates separately. Jerry, the ladies' man, now a structural engineer designing roller coasters. Tank is a minister. And Hawk takes paid clients on recreational flights. He's the hardest one to convince to come back, of course. Flight director Eugene Davis, played by William Devane, argues with Frank, saying he's not being a team player. He can't understand why Frank won't simply assist the engineers. He doesn't want to send 4 aging rookies into space with a new shuttle, so he insists that they take 2 young astronauts along with them. Now, I think maybe that the character of Eugene Davis could be based on Gene Kranz, who was a flight director at NASA, because he's referred to as Gene, but I could be wrong about that. Now, the reality is, as much as Frank does want to help NASA, he truly wants the dreams of his youth to come true. He wants that even more so, perhaps, and he also wants justice for himself and his teammates because they were snubbed, basically, all those years ago. So it's their last chance to go into space. Now, there's a few humorous moments where they undergo medical and physical tests. I love the eye test scene where Jerry hides the fact that he has poor vision by memorizing the small letters that Hawk and Frank had called out just before him. Space Cowboys is reminiscent of The Right Stuff or Apollo 13, except it's lighthearted and not based on historical events. It's not long before Hawk starts to develop a romantic connection with Sarah, and later, Hawk and Frank fight in a bar over their long-standing petty squabble from years ago. But the media eventually get wind of this NASA project, and the 4 old men become national heroes and overnight celebrities. They help to generate huge interest in NASA and space once again. The idea of 4 veterans coming out of retirement to save the day and achieve their dreams, it's the stuff of pure gold and a great story that can really engage the public and, of course, capture the imagination. They even end up being interviewed by Jay Leno. But they soon discover that Hawk is not well. He has pancreatic cancer and only months to live. Initially, it looks like he'll be left out of the mission, but Frank insists he be included, as he no doubt feels a sense of obligation or responsibility and loyalty to his old colleague. This helps the 2 men to heal their old wounds and let bygones be bygones. The mission launches and all appears to be going well, except for the small matter that the Russian communications satellite, they discover, is not in fact a communications satellite at all. It's a dormant nuclear weapons platform from the Cold War, and the KGB stole Frank's guidance system. The satellite is targeting cities in the US, and it's programmed to launch its missiles if it goes offline. So now the crew of the shuttle get to be heroes in a quite literal sense. So they decide ultimately to use the payload rockets to send the satellite out into space. But before they can do that, Ethan, one of the younger astronauts, decides to go on an unscheduled spacewalk to try to get Icon back in geosync orbit as they originally intended. But he screws up and causes significant damage to both the satellite and the shuttlecraft, and in the process this also injures the other younger astronaut, Roger. So that means, somewhat conveniently to the story, only the 4 old men are now left in charge. So, in a real Hollywood-type moment, the only option left is for one brave man to make the ultimate sacrifice to save the day. And it makes the most sense for this to be Hawk, considering he's dying anyway. He straps onto the satellite and they fire the missile engines into space, straight towards the moon. Frank brings the damaged shuttle home in a very dangerous landing maneuver. He's reunited with his wife, and the film ends with a final sequence on the moon. We see the damaged remains of the satellite lying in ruins. And then, it turns out, Hawk made it. He's lying dead in his spacesuit on the moon, having achieved yet another dream of his. Now, how exactly he managed to soft land on the surface of the moon with 6 nukes attached to his back is the stuff of don't think too much about it because it gets in the way of the really nice happy ending. Rewatching this movie again, I was taken aback by just how good the special effects are. They used a combination of models and CGI for the spaceship scenes in this film, and I have to say, the CGI in this film is excellent for the time, and really holds up today actually. CGI really began to come into its own in the late 90s. I mean, it got really good by that stage. But in recent years, it's gone downhill, with the likes of, say for example, the MCU films being churned out so fast, and without the same level of quality control that CGI once had, it seems. The Space Cowboys doesn't look even remotely dated in this regard. It's top drawer visuals, even for now. Anyway, this is a really enjoyable film with a lot of charm and fun, plenty of good character moments, a few laughs along the way, brilliant performances from a great cast all round, and Clint Eastwood also directed and produced this film, doing a great job once again. So thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on the film Space Cowboys in the comments below. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.